welcome to another edition of Weekly North News. It's Friday, so it's time to go over all of the NFC North headlines that we saw this week. All right, here we go. Let's get to it. So we're going to cover all four teams this week, but we're not going to do one headline for everybody. There was a lot of information that came out this week, a lot of stuff that I want to touch base on. So we're going to do some bullet points for each team. I've got about 3 things jotted down for everybody. So we'll go from there. And then next week, maybe we'll change the format again. Who knows? But it's getting to be that time of the year. We are closing in on free agency, so a lot of stuff is happening. We're going to start with the Chicago Bears. Their first bullet point is that they have hired former Texas coach Tom Herman as an offensive analyst slash special projects coach slash person. I don't know what the exact title is, but that is what they're describing it as. Raised a lot of eyebrows because people think that this is something to keep an eye on when the team determines who's going to be the quarterback for the 2021 season. And that actually segues into the next bullet point for the Bears, and that was that Ryan Pace said this week he has not ruled out bringing back Mitchell Trubisky, which, yeah, that's one of the things that you hear and you're like, okay, well, obviously he's lying, because I think at this point he pretty much has to rule it out unless the market is just not in his favor. And something to keep in mind, you know, even with yesterday's video, or the video I did the other day about the GM or the press conference with GM Rick Spielman of the Vikings, that you got to not take sports people for their word, because they will bend and twist the truth and say things that are definitely not happening behind the scenes, because at the end of the day, they're not held accountable to anybody except for their bosses, which would be the ownership of the team that they work for. So who's to say, right? And then lastly, the Chicago Bears, it has been rumored that they have offered the most substantial trade package offer for Deshaun Watson. I wasn't able to confirm that, but I just wanted to sort of bring it up to keep those discussions alive. Moving on to the Detroit Lions, they've had a busy week. First, they released Desmond Trufant earlier this week, and then today they have restructured Jamie Collins' contract, and according to the report, it is a significant restructure to alleviate cap space for the Lions. Most interesting thing that I saw this week regarding Detroit, though, was that they also had a press conference / interview with media, and their general manager says that there will be news on Kenny Golladay in the coming days. I guess it sounds like they know what they want to do with him, but they're not relaying that information just quite yet. So that is what is happening in Detroit. What is going on in Green Bay? There's this internal discussion that there's a possibility that they could end up franchise tagging Aaron Jones. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he would cost a lot of money to resign. And I think, you know, and I think most people would agree with me that giving a running back a huge contract is not something you really want to do. But given how the salary cap is coming down, the average annual value of running back contracts for as it relates to the franchise tag would be cheaper than it has been previously. At least that's my understanding. So that could be an option for them. They also had a virtual meeting this week with Tulsa linebacker Zaven Collins, and I highlight that specifically because we're going to see a lot more of that going forward. And it's interesting that they're touching base with Zaven Collins because I believe that the Packers pick in the first round is in that range of where he's going to be available and where he could come off the board. So it also highlights one of the things. I know a lot of people say, you know, Zaven Collins is a linebacker. There's this part of the draft community that believes he could actually move to the edge position. And I don't think the Packers are going to be able to keep both of the Smiths on the edge this year. One of them might be a cap casualty, whether it's Preston or I forget the other guy's name at the moment. But that was an interesting tidbit of information. And also making its rounds in Green Bay Packer news is the fact that they missed out on J.J. Watt. They were rumored to be one of the front runners to sign the interior defensive lineman, but he ended up going for a lot more money than Green Bay could ever really offer him in Arizona. Last but not least, we have the Minnesota Vikings, who most of this stuff is a little bit of a refresher for all of you. They have released Kyle Rudolph. They signed Stephen Weatherly. The news of the day for the Vikings just happened this morning is that they have released 2 cornerbacks. They said goodbye to Tay Hayes and Cordera Tankersley, and that's not really significant in terms of roster depth because those were just players who only happened to see playing time towards the end of the season due to injuries. So that's not a huge loss. It doesn't free up a whole bunch of cap space. That just really frees up roster space for them to be able to bring in other players. I believe that only clears them for about $450,000 under the cap, so they still have, I think, about $5 million before they finally get in under that number. Rick Spielman did talk about that in his press conference earlier this week, that is something that they're going to have to navigate as we get closer to free agency. They have to come in under the new salary cap. So that is something to look forward to in the coming days because more tough business decisions are on the horizon. So that's going to do it for this week for Weekly North News. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.